This is the Alter Slobadka number 5. Bring out a different point again. We're talking about the Alter's amazing educational methodologies and things we can learn from how he taught his Talmidim, how he was Megadol Talmidim, how he created so many of the Gdolei Dor of the next generation. And we're just obviously just scratching the surface of this amazing person. So one point which comes out from learning about him is he understood deeply and very well the times and what the times needed, what people needed in his time. I want to bring a dramatic example of this. We need a little hakdam, a little introduction to appreciate this. To the Bali Musar and Rabbi Nassan Tzvi was, the Alter was second generation to Bali Musar. Rabbi Yisrael Salanter was light years ahead of them. He was in a different world. He was a different type of being. He was the Gadol Ador in learning. He was a Torah genius of the greatest level. He had fixed all of his midas to the nth degree. He had made a revolution of Musar. He had founded the Mahalach that they believed in, that they spent their whole lives pushing and introducing into yeshivas, and through that, I certainly think they saved Klal Yisrael by making sure that the ruach of Torah would be b'tarasa, would be pure, etc. Now, if that would be true, you would think that educationally, whatever Rabbi Yisrael Salanter pushed and emphasized, that would be the same thing the Alter of Slobadka would push and emphasize. So this is brought down from the Alter's son-in-law, Rav Yitzchak Isaac Sher, who was the Rashiv of Slobadka here in Eretz Yisrael, and himself a Gadol B'Torah Ma'od Ma'od. So he says that Rabbi Yisrael writes in Igeres HaMusar that the way is to be misboned tam b'yiras onish. A person always has to have a fear and be thinking about the fear of punishment. Everything a person should put into is you always should be thinking about Yiras Hashem and Pachad Onsho. And then he writes, Ulam Admor Zal, that means his father-in-law, Haydarko b'hanagatim harabim, the way he was with people, but Musara Tov, Asher Hirif L'Talmidim, Lashpiyam Aleim L'Tchazik Tamid B'malas Abbas Hashem Yisbarach. He spoke in a way which is more our talk today. The Alter was always emphasizing Abbas Hashem. Mitoch HaKars Amukas B'chasadam and Nifloim HaKars Gadlas Adam, right? By thinking about how good Hashem was to us, and of course, a very famous part of his whole Shita, maybe the most famous part, which we have to talk a little bit more about that, Bezrat Hashem B'nei is Gadlas Adam, the greatness of man, the ability of man, the power of man. Rom Erku B'Godol Chav Yusuf, how beloved a Kadosh Baruch Hu, how beloved a person is to Hashem. Now, why did he do that? So he brings down a very interesting thing, because he understood that the Doros were different. In Rabbi Yisrael's time, Emunah was very strong, and therefore they could be mitchazek b'yiras onish, k'moshe tzarich, right? But the later generations, the Talmid Yeshivas in Rabbi Yisrael's, in the Alter Slobadka's time, they grew up in Olam Shel Hefker, a world of Hefkeris, that Emunah was already weak. And therefore, he saw that he had to talk about Emunah and Ava, etc., because he wanted to get that into them, and that would be what we would chazek him. Now, the point which is very relevant to bring out is how many generations we're talking about. Right? It's not like 500 years ago we speak about that, and 500 years later we have to speak a different way. Rabbi Yisrael the Alter was not a student of Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, but he had conversations with him, and he was a student of students of his. But he still saw, of course, out of no revolutionary sense and no sense that that was like Dhamma. Of course, Rabbi Yisrael was everything, but the time had changed, and therefore the time had changed. The message had to change. And let's just give a few examples how he always pushed that other type of talk. It says, "Pam nichnas lefnei bachur echad." He came in front of a boy, and the boy was looked upset. And the Alter kept saying to him, and be mitzaftzef, he was like calling to him, Am medush ne'oneh. We're an Am which is full of joy, full of pleasure. You atzevim. He was like sing-songing it to him. Am medush ne'oneh. You atzevim. V'chein kama pamim b'ne'imus v'mesinas. With beauty, he would say it to him, and so sweetly, until the boy would come out happy. And this is really an amazing story, which isn't exactly necessarily a proof to what we're saying, but I think it's an amazing point. So he says one time when a person would be too serious-minded, he wasn't happy with them. And he said a boy came from another yeshiva. I don't want to say the name yeshiva. It's in Pei Zayin in the Sefer Moras HaGedolim. You can look it up. And he came to Slobadka on his way to the yeshiva in Poland. but he was in a very chashuv yeshiva, and the Alter said to him, you look too serious, and he wanted to see a smile on his face, but this Talmud had been taught, he was sounding like he was a chashuv older bacher, but to be serious and to be a little tense, so he couldn't change to smile more. And Rabbi Yisrael saw this and likui nefesh gadol. He saw he had a serious problem. If you can't smile a little bit, you can't be happy, you have real issues. And he's Akadei Kach, that at that point they were in Lithuania, and the Alter's grandson was going to this yeshiva with him in Poland, and they had to be smuggled the border, so to speak. It wasn't like in the war times, but they had to get across the border. And the Alter didn't want his grandson to go with that bacher, with fear that not physically, but spiritually, that he wasn't in a good position. So the Alter didn't want his son being a grandson in a situation of sakanas drachim with such a bacher. Absolutely amazing. So you see again a radical shift from one generation to the next generation what the right message was. Maybe today we need a little more yira that the mechanchim can decide. But the point I want to bring out just in terms of the educational method is, of course, to be deeply connected to where your people are, where your children are, to know what's going on in the Talmidim. And we can only teach Torah Hashem, of course, but the exact part that we're emphasizing, and what you emphasize to one Talmud to another, one child to another, in one situation, one generation to another is different. And of course, like the Alter of Kelm said, if you think everybody is, if you're a hammer, you think everybody's a nail. You have to be able to come across to different people in different ways, and that's something we very much saw by the Alter. To change the message to fit his people.